Hello everyone, we are from Group 4 from English Children's Literatures class, and today we will be discussing our work on the analysis of loss and grief in the novel that we chose. Before that, I will introduce the group members. Our group consists of me, Aisya Aracelly, Gilang Prabaswara, Maulidya Indar, Rizki Azhar, Valda, Shalsabela, and Yevis Haritsyah.
My name is Maulidya Indar, and I will explain about definition of loss and grief. Loss is a situation that can be experienced by individuals when parting with something that previously excited, either partly or completely, or there is a change in life so that there is a feeling of loss. These events can be in the form of death, divorce, accidents, natural disasters, layoffs, and others. Meanwhile, grief is an emotional reaction to loss and occurs at the same time as loss. The cause is the same as loss due to separations, divorce, or death. Loss and grief are related to each other. So, a story that takes the theme of loss and grief, of course, has a sad story in it, but college from the main character and the main character himself.
Stages of grief. According to David Kessler and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, there are 5 stages of grieving. There is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Denial is the first of the 5 stages of grief. In this stage, the world becomes meaningless and overwhelming. We are in a state of shock and denial. We go numb. We try to find a way to simply get through each day. Denial and shock help us to cope and make survival possible. Denial helps us to face our feelings of grief. And the grace in denial is that nature's way of letting in only as much as we can handle. The second stage is anger. Anger is an emotion we are most used to managing. The truth is that anger has no limits. It can extend not only to your friends, doctors, family, yourself and your loved one, but also to God. Underneath anger is pain. It is natural to feel deserted and abandoned, but we live in a society that fears anger. Anger is strength and can be an anchor, giving temporary structure to the nothingness of loss. The next stage is bargaining. In this stage, we become lost in the maze of if only or what if statements. We want life to return to what it was. We want our loved one restored. We want to go back in time, find the truth sooner, recognize the illness more quickly, and stopping the accident from happening. Guilt is often bargaining's companion. The if onlys cause us to find fault in ourselves and what we think we could have done differently. After bargaining, our attention moves squarely into the present. Empty feelings present themselves, and grief enters our lives on a deeper level. This stage feels as though it will last forever. Depression. It's important to understand that this depression is not a sign of mental illness. It is the appropriate response to a great loss. We withdraw from life, left in a fog of intense sadness, wondering perhaps if there is any point on going alone. The loss of a loved one is a very depressing situation, and depression is a normal and appropriate response. The last stage is acceptance. This stage is often confused with the notion of being alright or okay with what has happened. This is not the case. Most people don't ever feel okay or alright. This stage is about accepting the reality that our loved one is physically gone and recognizing that this new reality is the permanent reality. We will never like this reality or make it okay, but eventually we accept it. We learn to live with it. It is a new norm with which we must learn to live.
Okay, I'm Yevis Haritsyah. I will explain the book's information for each stories. The first one is from Monster Calls. The author is Patrick Ness. The illustrator is Jim Kay. And the publication year is 2011. And here is the plot. The second one is the book's information of Bridge to Terabithia. The author is Catherine Patterson. The illustrator is Donna Diamond. The publication year is 1977. And here is the plot. And the last book's information is from Ida Always. The author is Sharon Lewis. The illustrator is Charles Santoso. And the publication year is 2016. And here is the plot. The reason we chose these three books is because the relevancy of the stories and the theme that we discussed. We decided to use a Monster Calls and Bridge of Terabithia due to our familiarity with the stories and they represent the young adults. As for Ida Always, we chose this because it represents the children who are under the age of 7. We believe these books are great choices to explore loss and grief and introduce them to children.
My name is Aisya Aracelly and I will continue my groupmate's explanation. So, here's the analysis of stages of grief in the novel A Monster Calls, Bridge to Terabithia, and the picture book Ida Always. The first book, A Monster Calls. So, this book, as already has been said before, has a story around the loss of a mother. Connor, who watches his mother suffers, has to let her go, in which later Maxim goes through the stages of grief. And the first stage is denial. Connor cannot accept that his mother will leave him soon, and he keeps denying the fact that his mother is ill and doesn't acknowledge that she cannot recover. And we can see it from some scenes in the novel, and here we put some excerpts. The first one is we've been okay so far. And then the next one is he was never going to say what happened in the real nightmare, never in million years. So here we can see that he kept denies that his mother is ill and he won't accept the fact that she is really, really sick. And then the next stage is anger. So after Connor feels that his mother is one step closer to death, he got mad. He's angry why such things has to happen to his mom out of all people, and he tries to save her with any possible way he can do. Here we can see some excerpts that are the evidences of the second stage. The first one is you lied. And then the second one, anger rose even higher in Connor's chest. Heal her. You have to heal her. The third stage, bargaining. So it doesn't explicitly depict it in the novel. However, we still can see it from some scenes. For example, the scenes where Connor asks his mother why she doesn't get treated with U3 in the first place instead of waiting for her condition to get worse. And here, the if only condition is stated by the monster, not Connor. But we still can say that it is his because the monster itself is a part of his dream. Unconsciously, Conrad created this dream to cope up with his grieving phase. According to the psychoanalysis theory by Sigmund Freud, this is called as dream displacement, where the nightmare here represents the death of his mother. This dream occurs when someone uses a safe person, event, or object as replacement to represent a more threatening person, event, or object. We can see this stage from the excerpt. If she could be healed, the U3 would do it. In the page 117. The next stage is depression. He is determined to save his mother with anything that could help her. So it shows how depressed Carter is because he even asked the monster, in which we all know that the monster itself is not a real thing. So I think we can call it as a depression. And here the excerpt which shows how depressed he is. Help me, I cannot hold on to her. Please help me, which is in the page 113. And then the last stage is acceptance. Connor realizes that it is better if he let his mother go. He knows that with him attempting to make his mother stay, it will make the burden and the suffer bigger for both his mother and him. That's why he decided to let her go. Not because he can't hold on to her any longer, but because he wants to end all of the struggle. And we can see from these excerpts. The first one is, I can't stand it anymore. I can't stand knowing that she'll go. I just want it to be over. I want it to be finished in the page 117. And the last excerpt, I could have held on, but I'll let her go.
Hello, my name is Valda and I will explain the stages of grief in Bridge to Therapithia. Losing his close friend for the first time, Jess had to deal with grief. First stage, denial and isolation. Jess could not accept the fact that Leslie has died. As we can see on page 131, no, he said, finding his voice. Leslie wouldn't drown. She could swim real good. And no, Jess was yelling now. I don't believe you. You are lying to me. The second stage is anger. Jess was frustrated and it's extremely unfair for him to be left by Leslie. As we can see on page 132, no, he said straight at Maybell. It's a lie. Leslie ain't dead. He turned around and ran out the door, letting the screen bang sharply against the house. The third stage is bargaining. He tried to change the situation to make Leslie alive. As we can see on the narration on page 132, knowing somehow that running was the only thing that could keep Leslie from being dead, it was up to him. He had to keep going. The fourth stage is depression. Just while the feeling of loss became heavier in him. As we can see on page 137, you don't even care, do you? Brenda was watching him from across the table. He looked at her puzzled, his mouth full. If Jimmy Dix died, I wouldn't be able to eat a bite. The coldness crawled up inside of him and flowed over. The fifth stage is acceptance. Jess still felt the grief, but he tried to accept that Leslie had died. As we can see on page 151, the coldness inside of him had moved upward into his throat, constricting it. He swallowed several times. And on page 152, come on, Prince Tyrion, he said quite loudly. We must make a funeral wreath for the queen. So here, Jess had tried to accept that the queen, Leslie, their queen, had died. And Jess tried to make a funeral wreath for her.
My name is Rizki Azhar, and I'm going to continue the analysis on the third book. In Ida Always, it only showed 2 stages out of 5 that we have mentioned earlier. The first one is denial. Gus's denial can be seen from the part after he knew Ida was seriously ill and cannot be healed. He said to Ida, "Don't go," repeatedly, showing his denial on Ida's fate. And then the second, and also the last stage, is acceptance. At the end of the story, Gus finally accepts Ida's death, and he is ready to moving on. It can be seen from the excerpt. Gus smiles. He steps into the spot where Ida liked to soak in the sun. He listens to their city pulsing around him. He remembers that Ida said, "You don't have to see it to feel it." In conclusion, these books are not only give us a good and meaningful stories, but they also portray the process of dealing with loss and grief almost as real as it can be. With these books, The readers, especially young adults and children, can learn what loss and grief are, also on how to deal with them. These are the references that we used for this presentation. Thank you. That is all from us. If you have any question, feel free to ask.